Sit now, my friend. Let the earth beneath you cradle your body, as it has cradled countless generations before us. Close your eyes and listen to the breath of the wind, the voice of the water, and the song of the trees. These are the teachings of our ancestors, whispers of the Great Spirit who dwells in all things. Every year, millions of Americans gather around tables to celebrate Thanksgiving, a holiday steeped in themes of gratitude, family, and togetherness. But beneath the familiar narratives lies a complex and often painful history. To understand the true origins of Thanksgiving, we must journey back to the autumn of 1621, to the shores of what is now Plymouth, Massachusetts. Breathe deeply. With each breath, feel the rhythm of life, the pulse of earth, steady as the beating drum. Inhale the cool air of this season and let it remind you of the harvest we have gathered. Exhale and let go of the burdens you carry. As the leaves let go their hold on the branches. Now, picture yourself in the time of the first gathering. The autumn sun sinks low, painting the land in gold. Around you are the Wampanoag, the people of the first light. Across the fire sit the newcomers, the ones who call themselves pilgrims. Though they are strangers, they have found ways to share this moment in peace. The feast of 1621 was not called Thanksgiving at the time, nor was it part of an annual tradition. Thanksgiving celebrations were sporadic in early America, often declared by leaders to give thanks for specific events, such as military victories or abundant harvests. Indigenous ceremonies of gratitude, however, had long existed, though these were largely ignored or erased by the expanding colonies. The peaceful feast of 1621 between the Wampanoag and the Pilgrims is often celebrated as a symbol of harmony. But the reality that followed tells a far more painful story. While the initial gathering was marked by mutual cooperation, it was a fleeting moment in a much longer history of tension and conflict. Over the following decades, as Plymouth and other colonies expanded, settlers encroached on Wampanoag lands, disrupting their way of life and undermining their sovereignty. The fragile peace that once existed gave way to mistrust, violence, and betrayal. By the mid-17th century, the Wampanoag faced mounting pressures from colonial expansion. Land disputes and cultural suppression eroded the foundations of their society, culminating in King Philip's War. Named after Metacom, the son of Massasoit and leader of the Wampanoag, this conflict became one of the bloodiest in American history. Entire Wampanoag villages were destroyed, and the survivors endured enslavement, displacement, or forced assimilation. The war devastated not only the Wampanoag, but also other indigenous nations in the region, leaving their populations and political power shattered. The consequences of colonization extended far beyond the battlefield. Warfare, disease, and displacement decimated native populations, while policies of cultural erasure sought to suppress indigenous languages, traditions, and governance. What began as a moment of shared survival in 1621 became part of a larger narrative of exploitation and loss. As the settlers' hunger for land and dominance consumed the very people who had once welcomed them. To understand the legacy of Thanksgiving, one must confront these truths. The idealized story of unity obscures the violence and suffering that followed, diminishing the resilience and resistance of the Wampanoag and other indigenous peoples. Their survival in the face of colonization is a testament to their enduring strength, even as their lands, lives, and cultures were forever changed. Let us give thanks, as our people have done since time before memory. Give thanks for the waters that quench the thirst of all living beings. Give thanks for the soil that cradles the seeds, for the fish that swim in the rivers, for the game that runs through the forest. These gifts are not ours to own, but are shared among all who walk, crawl, swim, and fly. Imagine the great feast before us, bounty from two worlds, corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters. Sit beside the strange bread of wheat, the wild turkey and deer, offered by our hunters, are joined by their roasted fowl. In this sharing, there is harmony, if only for this moment. Thanksgiving as we know it began to take shape in 1863 during the Civil War. Influenced by writer Sarah Josepha Hale, often called the Mother of Thanksgiving. When the day became a yearly tradition, it was during a time of great conflict. President Lincoln called for a national Thanksgiving in 1863, hoping to bring unity to a nation at war with itself. His words spoke of fruitful fields and skies of health, of the providence they saw as guiding their path. Yet Lincoln, like the writer Sarah Hale, spoke only of their struggles and their triumphs. There was no acknowledgement of the pain endured by the first people of this land, the ones who had shown the settlers how to survive when they first arrived. President Abraham Lincoln declared the last Thursday in November a national day of thanksgiving and prayer. Lincoln hoped the holiday would unite a nation divided by war, offering Americans a moment to reflect on their shared values and divine blessings. By this time, the story had been changed in their telling. The truth of the feast, of the peace, had been set aside for a tale that fit their needs. In their stories, Native Americans became shadows, helpful guides who vanished after their tables were full. They did not speak of how they took the land, the lives, the freedom. They did not tell how the songs were silenced, or how the Native Americans were scattered across unfamiliar places. Thanksgiving became a story about the settlers' perseverance, not about the people who had made that perseverance possible. This is the history that is carried forward, one that erases the voices while celebrating their survival. And yet, the Wampanoag are still here. Their voices are not gone. They are rising. We remember the truth of that first gathering, and we remember everything that followed. While they give thanks for their blessings, we mourn for what they have lost. We give thanks, too, not for their conquest, but for the strength of the Wampanoag people, the endurance of their ways, and the hope that their stories will finally be heard. When we sit at our tables this season, let us remember not just the Pilgrims' own struggles, but the Wampanoag as well. Let us learn to give thanks in truth, not in forgetting. For the Great Spirit sees all, and the land remembers. It holds our history in its soil and its waters, in the trees that once shaded our ancestors. One day, perhaps, their thanks will honor all as much as it honors their own triumphs. Until then, we will continue to walk with the strength of the people of the first light, holding their stories in our hearts and passing them to the next generation, as they have always done. As we give thanks, we must honor the truth. The path ahead is uncertain, for it is not only food and stories that we bring to this fire. There is also the shadow of change. Our lands will not always be ours, and our ways will not always be free. But we must know the strength of resilience. In every season, there is both loss and renewal. Today, for many Native Americans, Thanksgiving serves as a painful reminder of colonization, loss, and cultural erasure. Since 1970, Indigenous peoples and allies have observed the National Day of Mourning in Plymouth, Massachusetts, to honor the resistance, resilience, and survival of Native communities. Efforts like this are now underway to tell a fuller, more accurate history of Thanksgiving. Schools and museums are incorporating Wampanoag voices and tribes, reclaiming their traditions, languages, and stories. The true history of Thanksgiving is not a simple tale of gratitude and harmony. It is a story of survival, resilience, and the enduring strength of Indigenous cultures. Now, breathe again. Let your heart fill with gratitude for the gifts of this earth, but also with respect for the trials endured by those who came before you. Remember that to give thanks is not to ignore the hardships, but to recognize the endurance and beauty that rise in their wake. As you open your eyes, carry this balance with you: the joy of the harvest and the wisdom of the struggle. Walk with reverence for the land and its cycles, and with humility toward those whose stories shaped the ground beneath your feet. Let your life be a prayer of gratitude, spoken not just in words, but in your deeds. The sun sets now, but the fire within us will not die. We are all threads in the great web of life, connected by the spirit of this sacred earth.